My biggest question was just about my personal statement and my writing supplements. I don't have anybody in my family who has ever attended law school or gone through the application process, and I don't really know anybody, close family friends. So I was kind of looking for guidance about maybe choosing a topic or things like that, just writing.
Yeah, of course. And I remember you emailed me a couple of potential topics, and I'm happy to talk through them with you. I think, like I said before, any topic can be good. It all depends on how you execute it.
I think the thing that I'm most worried about is telling somebody else's story or maybe straying off topic a little bit. Like I have a lot of things that interconnect with each other, but I think I'm going to have a hard time staying on topic and staying like to a central theme. So that's my biggest worry.
It sounds like you're aware of the problem. So the biggest thing is simply to avoid it. And after you write your rough draft, ask yourself, did I stray or did I stay focused on myself and my journey?
Do you have like any like inklings or inclinations about are they gonna like anything that I write about, or is there one specific topic that I discussed with you that you think like stands out, or is there anything that you think I should stay away from? I know there's an issue with being too personal in some personal statements or diversity statements or things like that. So I want to try and stay away from freaking the admissions people out, if that makes any sense.
Sure, I completely understand. And out of the topics you sent me, I thought that any of those could have been completely fine. I think in general, there are few topics that I would stay away from. I would stay away from topics that could be offensive or polarizing or overly political if it's going to generate a strong reaction from the admission officer potentially, because they are human beings after all. I would stay away from that if possible, if you're able to avoid it. And then anything that might lead them to have concerns about your ability to do well in law school. But out of what you sent me, all of that seemed fine.
Okay, that's good to know. It's just, I just want to make sure that I'm not going to polarize or I'm not going to lead to concerns or, but I still want like a differentiation between myself and other applicants. And I'm aware that law school admissions is basically a numbers game. Supplements and things like that, they do matter, but I'm aware of the LSAT and the GPA, but I just want to make sure if you have any tips about how I can differentiate myself through writing supplements. Is it telling an anecdote? Is it my writing style? If you have any tips about that, I would love to know.
Yeah, it's all of the above. So you do want it to be memorable. You do want it to be colorful. You do want to use anecdotes if possible. You do want to have a hook if possible. All of that is worthwhile. I think you've got the right idea. It's all based on the execution. And until you've written something, we're not going to know. So I would suggest write some drafts. You suggested 3 potential topics, write a rough draft of each one, and then see which one clicks the most and share it with other people to get their feedback too. You might be able to cover more than one topic in your application because you've got the potential to write not only a main personal statement, but there are also potential optional essays. So you could write an essay you could cover a separate topic in one of those essays too.
Okay, so it is good to write more than less. If I can write about something, I should write about something. It's not like a thing where they want to spend as least amount of time as possible on applications, because that's the biggest thing that I guess I'm worried about with submitting multiple things is, are they going to want to read 3 essays from someone like me, or are they going to want to just read 1 essay and not have I don't want to call it a waste of time. But if I can write something, should I write something?
If you feel that it adds something new and they would be glad to have that information. So don't add an essay that isn't going to include much or isn't going to give you much more just for the sake of doing so. But if you can write a quality essay and add a new side to yourself and show that through this essay, then it's worth including. And maybe you suggested 3 topics to me. Maybe you would include the best 2 out of the 3 and leave out the 3rd one. That's one route you could take depending on what you end up writing. Make the essays good enough that they're worth including. Okay, perfect. And then you just mentioned, should I include things that are found throughout my application? Like, is it like if I had something like me overcoming the academic challenge my freshman year that they will probably see on my transcript, or writing about an internship that I've had in the past, is it smart to write about that in a personal statement, or should I just let that rest and let them think about that as they will? Depends on the reason. So if there's going to be an open question, you do want to address it. But low grades freshman year, that's not necessarily worth talking about because it's so long ago, you've already shown an upward trend. But if your most recent semester, what grades were lower for some reason, that could raise a red flag for them. And if there is a explanatory factor, then you might want to mention that.
Okay.
But it is okay to touch on things that were in your application elsewhere, because you can go into far more depth on them in the essays.
Okay. So you just said just write drafts and see which one kind of connects to me the most, or try and, work the ideas together and see if they make sense.
Yeah, and the biggest reason I say that is because we're dealing in hypotheticals right now. You've raised the idea that you might go into directions that don't involve yourself. You might talk too much about other people, but you're aware of the potential problem. So let's just execute, get something on paper, get something on the screen, get a draft out there, so at least you have something to work with.
Okay. And what's the most common mistake do you think law school applicants make? What's the most common mistake in writing supplements?
You're already aware of it. It's the issue of talking about too much about other people and not enough about yourself. Okay. That's it. That's it, really. So I guess my question is, now that you're aware of it, now that you're aware of that as a potential problem, if you were to still fall into that trap, why would that be?
I mean, one of my essay topics that I wanted to write about was primarily about my upbringing and having to do a lot with my parents. So I guess me writing about my parents might be me writing about them and not how they've affected me. So I guess that might be the biggest, like the most meaningful essay topic that I've presented to you. But I'm just worried about it reflecting all the good that they've done and not all the good that I've done, like coming out of that situation. Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, and I could definitely see that as a potential hazard of this topic. So I'd go about it very carefully and make sure that you're only using them as a jumping off point, but the focus remains on you.
So would it be helpful just to write about them in the introduction and then maybe the rest of the paragraphs are about like my experience, or is there a certain like number standpoint, like one paragraph about them and then the rest about me, or is it just kind of up to everybody?
It's up to everybody, but that's not a bad idea. If you can bucket them in a certain area of the essay and the rest of it is not including them or featuring them, then you're much less likely to make the focus about them, because you're guaranteeing that they're limited to only the first paragraph or only the first 10% or 5%. But the majority is about you.
Okay. And I had one question about, I'm really weak writing conclusions. I'm not good at writing conclusions. I have like the ideas and I have what I want to say in my head, but it's really hard writing it down. So if you have any tips about writing conclusions or what I should present in my last paragraph or anything like that, I would love to know.
Yeah, sure. I would say don't make the conclusion an area where you repeat more, because you have such limited space. Conclusions are tricky, especially in a personal statement. I can't really say anything too general about them. It would all be based on the draft and how it unfolded.
Okay. I think that's all I really had questions about, just about a general choosing a topic and then my conclusions, because I'm not good at writing conclusions. But okay. Just too general, don't try and repeat yourself. Make it about, should it be forward looking, or should it be a reflection, or should it be how I want to translate everything to law school, or what do you think would be the most helpful?
Any of those could be fine. Unfortunately, there's not really a formula for personal statements. Everyone is different. I've seen great forward looking conclusions. I've seen great reflection conclusions. You do want the application as a whole to address the future of why law school for you in particular. But the personal statement doesn't necessarily have to include that, even though it could. So like all the legal questions, the answer is it depends, and it depends here too.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the hardest thing that I've had to deal with writing everything right now, is just that it's completely up to me. like having a rubric, and I've looked at some of the past personal statement essay like questions, and they're very vague. So I think I just have to kind of do a trial and error.
Yeah, trial and error. Write one draft on each of your 3 topics, and you could even go further with it and write multiple versions of each of those specific options, and then see what clicks best. But you're gonna get a lot more momentum, a lot more traction if you actually have things out there to look at versus just the blank screen of endless possibilities.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's been great connecting with you. Before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Honestly, that probably not, and knowing that there's not a blueprint. Law schools will look at everybody and every personal statement on an individual basis, and there's not a real rubric or schematic to how you write a personal statement. So I think it gives me a lot of freedom, and it definitely makes me more confident in myself, what you just told me, and it makes me feel a little bit easier going through this entire process, knowing that it's just, I can write whatever I want as long as it's about me.
Awesome. Well, keep in touch and let me know if you need anything as you move forward.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. Have a good one. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.